Welcome to Water Talk. I'm Seth Wallach. I'm the Water Authority's Community Outreach Coordinator. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about why we do this program before I introduce the rest of our panel and our special guests. So we know there's a lot of information out there on TV and the papers about drinking water quality. And the reason we wanted to start this program is just to make sure our residents here in Suffolk are getting the most accurate information about their water. So we started this program a few years ago. Our service territory does cover the entire county from Melville to Montauk. And you're going to hear from our experts here, as you can see on the side of your Zoom call, about the protection, the preservation of your drinking water supply. We're going to hear from the SCWA laboratory on how they make sure your water is always safe to drink. And we're going to hear about some local infrastructure projects to Port Jefferson and Port Jefferson Station and Stony Brook area that are relevant to you. We're also going to talk about something called WaterTrak, which actually lets you monitor your local water quality from your computer. And we're also going to talk about water conservation because it's springtime and we want to make sure that everyone's not wasting water. Most importantly, however, we're here to hear from you. We want to know what your questions are. We want to make sure we're giving you the answers. So with that, I'm going to introduce Councilman Kornreich. He's going to say a few words. Take it away.
Thank you very much, and thank you for coming to address Council District 1 and keep us abreast of what's going on there. Especially on Earth Day, it's a good day to point out that water quality is very important to the people of our Council District, as it is everywhere. We're fortunate to live along the Long Island Sound here. We've got marinas, a harbor, pristine ponds and bays, and of course on Long Island here, our drinking water is dependent on the underlying sole source aquifer system. It supplies about 400 million gallons a day out of there, supplying people all over Nassau and Suffolk County. And we really need to make sure that we're focused on ensuring the sustainability of this aquifer system. One of the key pieces to that is open space preservation and preservation of our local waterways. Suffolk County voters, and I know there's a lot of support in our area for the water quality protection restoration program initiatives that funded about $50 million, if I'm remembering correctly, approximately $50 million in projects to control stormwater runoff, mitigate pollution of groundwater, and do restoration of wetlands and natural habitats. So our residents are willing to invest. They understand the importance of protecting water, and they're willing to invest to make it happen. And I just want to note that we have a couple of we have a group here that's headed by a couple of our local residents called the Setauket Harbor Task Force. It's headed by George Hoffman and Lori Viteri, and a number of other people are very involved with it. And they have been not only advocating for our local waterways, helping to secure funds, but they're doing projects like the lines of sugar kelp seedlings, which will help also protect and maintain water quality. So I want to thank the Moore Family Charitable Foundation for funding the project, and George and Lori Viteri for bringing the project to fruition. And I just want to say that if you have any issues related to waterfront areas or questions about water quality, of course, the Suffolk County Water Authority is highly responsive. My office is 631-451-6963. You can contact me as well. And again, thanks to Suffolk County Water for coming down and keeping us all posted on the great work you're doing. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for taking the time out to join us, Councilman. We really appreciate it. So just a quick bit of housekeeping here. We're going to run through some slides for you. You're going to hear from a few of our experts here at the Water Authority, and then we're going to take everybody's questions at the conclusion of the presentation. So just make sure you're using the Q&A feature within the Zoom call. You can type your questions into the Q&A, or you could just hold on to the end and use the raise hand feature, and we'll give you permission to speak to ask your question. All right, so what is the Water Authority? We bring this up because it actually comes up a lot. And a lot of people don't know that we're actually not a part of Suffolk County government. We're an independent public benefit corporation that operates under the Public Authorities Law. We serve about 1.2 million residents throughout the county, and we began our operations in 1951. So because we're a public authority, we operate on a not-for-profit basis, and we are one of the largest suppliers of groundwater in the country. We also boast some of the lowest water rates in the country, which we're very proud of, and 2 AAA bond ratings. So just a mark of fiscal responsibility, you know, that allows us to borrow at lower rates and really keep costs down for everyone, which is great. So who are we not? As I said earlier, we're actually not a branch of Suffolk County government, and we do not create nor do we enforce drinking water standards. This is the responsibility of the EPA and the New York State Department of Health. We follow their guidance, their regulations. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Paul, who's going to talk to you about some infrastructure projects in your neighborhood. Paul?
Okay, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. So I'll start off with some statistics. The Water Authority has 633 wells. Of those, 587 are active, which means they've pumped to the system in the past year. And those wells are located at 240 pump stations and well fields, pump stations. That the term is the same. We have about 2 to 4 wells per pump station. We have 68 storage tanks that provide about 72 million gallons of storage. And what the tanks give you is they give you a little bit extra capacity when demand outstrips supply, and they feed the system. And then they also act as a cushion, kind of like a big balancing chamber on the system. We pump, if you add all the wells together, we pump as a whole to about 210 million gallons a day on average through the year. And that ranges from about 100 million to 120 million in the wintertime, to 4 to 5 times that in the summertime. The 10-year average is about 470 million gallons a day, which is quite a number. And that is largely due to lawn water irrigation, automatic sprinklers, and the majority of that water is pumped during the period of 2 a.m. to 7 a.m. And we'll talk a little bit about that a little later. But that's the main driver for when we pump the water. Looking at our facilities across Suffolk County, all the blue dots are well fields, right? And you can see they're spread all over Suffolk County, with the exception of a couple areas. Riverhead has their own water district. Hampton Bays is a Southampton system. There's a few systems in western Suffolk County in the town of Huntington, Greenlawn, Dix Hills, and South Huntington Water District. The Water Authority has the rest, and that's about 85% of the county. The red stars are our administrative offices. We have our headquarters, our corporate headquarters in Oakdale. That's where most of our administrative functions are done. It's also the office where my department, the construction maintenance department, has its largest office. We maintain the piping system and the water service and services and those water meters and those kind of things. Tech services nearby in Great River houses our engineering department, the purchasing department, risk management, and then in Bayshore we have the production control department, and production control is responsible to operate the water system, and they pump and treat the water and maintain the water supply facilities. Their primary operations center is there. Our SCADA system, which is our computer system that we use to monitor all of our well fields, and we can control our pumps, is also housed there. We have a wireless network that sends information back and forth across the county to the control center, and we can control and monitor everything that's going on there. In Hauppauge, we have an operations center that's a shared facility. Our lab is there. which we'll talk more about in the presentation. Our customer service has a group they operate out of there, as well as our meter shop where we store and test and distribute the water meters that we use for billing. The Quorum Operations Center is another large center which is shared between customer service, construction maintenance, and production control. And it's also our premier customer service center, our call centers there. West Hampton is another shared facility, production control and construction maintenance. And then East Hampton and Huntington are two satellite offices that we use for those local areas. So source water, where does our water come from? So like Seth said, we get all of our water from the ground, and all that water falls on the ground as a raindrop and percolates down into the aquifer. And you can kind of see this is a cross section of Long Island. You can see the different layers of the different aquifers that we have. There's two primary aquifers that we use as water supply, the upper glacial, which is really the pile of sand that the glacier left behind, right? That's open to the surface. That's where the water, we call that the water table. Then you have the Magathy aquifer, which is a much deeper one. It's older, actually like dinosaur age. And then those wells are deeper. Those are the two principal aquifers that we get our water from. And then the third one is the Lloyd, which we don't really utilize that much. So you can see the blue arrow here is showing that from the deep wells, a raindrop falling near that wellhead is not going to be getting its way down to the well. The water is coming from actually much further away. So, you know, the land use nearby is going to impact the water that gets to the well. So you can see there's a farm field, there's a gas station, some houses. All of these things can have impacts on the water supply and percolate down into the water table. The shallower well, you can see is much closer by. So a raindrop falling near there will get to that well much sooner than the deeper ones. So the takeaway is, you know, we live on top of our water supply, and it's important to be mindful of that and what we do and the impacts that we have, because sooner or later it's going to make its way down to the water that we drink, and we want that to be as pure as possible. This is a graphic of our well fields in the area. So, you know, we have wells every few miles, kind of like nodes on a grid. The tanks are like nodes on a grid, and this gives us a tremendous amount of redundancy and reliability, where we're not dependent on any one treatment source. Like most surface water systems have one or two big treatment plants. We have a lot of smaller ones, and so that gives us a lot of redundancy and reliability. And you can see they're interspersed all through the area. This is a chart of main breaks. So we have 300 to 600 main breaks that we process typically throughout a year, and that we repair and respond to. This graphic just shows the main breaks that we had from December 2020, and the number of main breaks we have through a year is largely dependent on the winter that we have, because the colder weather and when frost hits the ground and penetrates, the number of main breaks ticks up quite a bit. And so we had quite a few this winter, because this winter, if you recall, was worse than some of the previous ones. So we had quite a few. Most of the main breaks happen with the cast iron mains. That's the oldest water mains that we have. The majority of Suffolk County built out in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. That was the material. It's a little brittle. And the newer pipe that we use is called ductile iron pipe, and it's more resilient. It has a longer lifespan. But some of these main breaks, it shows areas where we look to target some of our pipe replacement, and we replace about 15 to 20 miles a year all through Suffolk County. We spend $18 to $20 million in recent years on a replacement program. Here's an example of a main break excavation. So, we get a call, there's a leak. We do all of our leaks in-house with our own staff. Most of our leaks repaired with a 2-man crew. They come in and they'll dig down, and most of our breaks are actually just what they call it a vertical. It's a crack in the pipe. We put a repair clamp on that, disinfect everything before we go, flush it out, recharge it, cover it back up, and away we go. There's always a lot of other utilities we have to be mindful of, especially nowadays: electric, telephone, gas. We're underneath everything, and that can be quite challenging sometimes. So we have to, work our way down. We don't want to damage any of that stuff to get it. We're underneath everybody, so that's always a challenge. And then one thing I did want to mention before you go is we get a lot of once we finish this repair, we put temporary patch, and we do get a lot of calls from people concerned that the patch job we did after the repair leaves a lot to be desired, and the main reason is that it's temporary, and we have to allow time for that repair to compact and settle. So when we make the permanent repair, it's not going to settle any further, and it'll look good and it'll be safe. So that's why we just have a temporary there. Talking about some infrastructure improvement projects, we did a replacement well at Sherry Drive recently and at James Boulevard in Terryville. Again, with most of the water system building out in the 50s and 60s, we got about 50 years on the wells, constructed at that time, and so a lot of these wells are at their lifespan, end of their lifespan. So we have a proactive program where we replace the wells with newly constructed ones with modern materials. So we did 2 of those in this area. And then we recently installed granular activated carbon filters at James Boulevard and 2 at Chestnut Street in Port Jeff. James Boulevard's in Terryville by the school with the elevated tank nearby, if you know the area. All 3 GA systems were installed to treat volatile organic compounds. That's something that wherever we have these compounds present, we install granular activated carbon to remove those contaminants. Just some replacement projects, water main replacement projects that I'm directly involved with that I wanted to highlight in the area that we've done in recent years. Anything that I highlighted in red were some projects that we've upgraded, some older cast iron pipe with newer, usually upsized for modern day demands. In the 40s and in the 20s, when some of these systems were built, particularly in the older villages like Port Jeff Village and Setauket, for example, those systems were built in the turn of the century. So a lot of the pipe sizes, what was good back in 1920, is not adequate for today's usage. So we have to upgrade the capacity, the size of those pipes. And so this is one of the factors that we consider when we do our replacement program. So we did 3,600 feet of 12 and 6-inch cast iron in Old Post Road and Gnarl Hall Road in Setauket that we replaced with new 12-inch ductile that we finished last year, price of $1.4 million. Similarly, a few years ago, we did another stretch on Old Post Road where we replaced the 8-inch with 12, again, upsizing it. And then in the green is what we're going to be doing in 2022 or 2023, where we're going to replace the remaining stretch of the pipe on Old Post and then pipe in Port Jeff Village. Some of that pipe in Port Jeff Village is 4-inch. It's undersized for today, and we're going to upsize it. And that's going to complete a transmission line that's going to help us move more water into Port Jeff, because all of the well supply we have is in Setauket. And this will give us another line and increased reliability to get more water in Port Jeff. So those are some big projects that we've got going. We recently did a replacement project in Belterre on Camp Woodbine, where we took old 4-inch and 2-inch against undersized water main, and we put it on existing water main, and we tied those customers over to improve their pressure and their water quality. And that we finished that last year. And then we just finished a big project up in Harbor Beach Road in Mount Sinai by the marina. We had old 8-inch and 6-inch cast iron that was affected by the salt, and it was failing. We were having quite a large number of main breaks, and so we targeted that for replacement. We just finished that job in March 2021, and we're trying to get that paved and done for the summer boating season. So that's just the highlight of some of the projects we've done in the area.
All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Valerie Kam. I'm an assistant supervising chemist here at the laboratory. I have been with Suffolk County Water Authority for about 11 years now. I started my career here as an intern, and I was hired the following year as a chemist. Throughout my career here, I have been involved with many innovative technologies and method developments involved with testing our drinking water. I'm always proud to tell my friends and family, and now all of you, what goes into keeping your drinking water safe. We are a state-of-the-art laboratory, and that being said, we are one of the largest groundwater laboratories in the country. Samples are taken at the wellhead at various stages of treatment throughout our distribution system for bacteria, inorganic and organic chemicals. Even though New York State has some of the toughest drinking water standards in the country, we test at higher frequencies and with tougher in-house standards than is often required of us by our state and federal regulators. So to give you an example of this, our laboratory tested for 400 chemicals, 251 more than is required by our regulators. And because we are testing at higher frequencies than the Suffolk County Department of Health Service even requires of us, we analyzed over 75,000 samples, which produced over 181,000 test results. Our laboratory has state-of-the-art instrumentation, which allows us to detect contaminants at trace levels. And when I say trace levels, I'm talking about ppm, or parts per million, ppb, or parts per billion, ppt, or parts per trillion. And to give you a reference of what these units of measurement even mean, 1 part per million is 1 second in 12 days, 1 part per billion is 1 second in 32 years. And 1 part per trillion is 1 second in 32,000 years. I like to give another reference for 1 part per trillion because 32,000 years is a very long time and it's hard to visualize. But 1 part per trillion is equivalent to 1 drop of water into an Olympic-sized swimming pool. This is a photo of a field technician. She's collecting a water sample, a drinking water sample, and she's going to test it for bacteria and chemical constituents right before it enters your home or business. So these samples in particular are representative samples of what is coming from your tap. We test here for pH and chlorine, and we report this right away back to the laboratory as well. So if you see one of these green boxes in your community, you can identify one of them. We have over 300 of these sample stations. They are secure and only our SCWA staff can access them. They are throughout our distribution zones. So we know you are all here tonight because you're interested in the quality of your drinking water. You can go to scwa.com and you can access our Consumer Confidence Report, or CCR as we call it. From there, you can locate which distribution zone you live in, and you can access your treated and raw water quality for your area. A tremendous amount of time and effort goes into these documents to explain to you, the customer, our treatment techniques, the quality of your drinking water, and to showcase some of the current events that have gone on in the past year.
Hello, my name is Rich Bova. I'm the Deputy Director of Strategic Initiatives and a geologist here at the Suffolk County Water Authority. So this evening, I'm going to show you the interactive website known as WaterTrak that was launched by the Long Island Commission for Aquifer Protection, also known as LICAP, back in 2016. Next slide. So WaterTrak combines interactive maps with water quality data to create a picture of the status of Long Island groundwater. The information draws from tens of thousands of water samples from wells operated by districts in both Nassau and Suffolk counties. The program is the first of its kind in New York State and gives water providers the ability to track potential threats in the water supply and then present this information to the public and to regulators. And as we're demonstrating tonight, WaterTrak is also available to for the public to use. You can access the program through the website licaponline.com. Next slide. So once you're on the website, you can search for contaminants and have results displayed by concentration range and location. Compounds can also be searched based on well depth, water district, or the location of a sample station. You can also set search parameters that will allow you to look up specific contaminant levels for, say, lead, iron, chlorides, nitrates, and other compounds. And you can get results both as untreated water and as treated water, which is the water sent to customers. So just to point out the difference, raw water is like straight from the environment without any treatment processes, as opposed to treated water, which is conditioned for public use and would include chlorination, pH adjustment, and possibly filtration. So let's look at this example. We put a location in the address field, and then we select what we want to search for and set the concentration range. In this case, we search for chlorides above 250 parts per million. So here you can see on the map that we have one result returned. So WaterTrak is very easy to use, and it's also very intuitive. And again, you can visit the LICAP website to access the program, or simply put WaterTrak in your web browser. Thank you, and I'll give the presentation back to Seth.
Thanks, Rich. Appreciate it. So the last thing we want to talk to you about tonight is water conservation, and this is especially important today on Earth Day, but also, towards the beginning of spring when everyone's turning on their automatic irrigation systems. So why should I conserve water? You may have noticed one of Paul's slides earlier, the "Where does our water come from" slide. You may have noticed a pretty thick layer, that Magothy middle aquifer layer, where we're getting the majority of our water. It's pretty abundant, but it's not limitless. So while we have enough water in the aquifer, we want to make sure we keep it that way. So when people use more and more water, and usually that means more lawn watering, that puts a strain on our infrastructure at the height of the summer. And when we need to build additional wells just to keep up with summer lawn watering, the cost of additional wells, a new well is probably over $1 million. That ultimately gets passed along to our customers. So we're a company that sells water, and we're encouraging you to use less of it because we want to make sure we keep costs down for everyone. So our peak usage tends to be 3 a.m. to 7 a.m. That surprises a lot of people because most people are asleep between the hours of 3 and 7 a.m. Like, how could I be using water? I'm asleep. But that's when most people have their sprinklers set to come on. And like we said earlier, lawn sprinklers are by far the most consumptive use of water that we have here at the authority. And especially if you live in a coastal community, over pumping can lead to negative water quality impacts. You don't want to, for example, if you're, this is more of a South Shore issue, but you don't want to, for example, over pump a South Shore well where you could get some saltwater intrusion into that well. It would foul the well and break it, and we'd have to build a new one. So this is a graph that displays some seasonal water use at SCWA. So this is what we pump on an average winter day. And then this orange line here is what we pump on an average summer day, a little more on the weekend than during the week. But what we really want to point out is this light blue line. This represents people using water to water their lawns in the rain. And we want to make sure that we're avoiding this waste of water by changing some of our irrigation habits. So the first thing you can do to help us, like I said, make sure your system's not set to operate between 3 and 7 a.m. And we do this for two benefits. It benefits us because it doesn't put that strain on our infrastructure at that time. That's also a benefit to you because you might see better water pressure if everyone's not using water at the same time. We recommend that folks adopt an odd even watering schedule. So what that means is if your house is an odd numbered address, only water on odd days of the calendar, and same for even. And the most important thing you can do to change your irrigation habits is use a smart irrigation timer that uses water more efficiently. So smart irrigation timers actually connect to the Wi-Fi in your home, and they get out to the internet in order to connect to local weather stations. And so they're tracking hyper-local weather. So if it's going to rain on Tuesday, maybe it won't water on Monday. They're really efficient at saving water just by being connected to the web. There are many, many brands of smart controllers. Most of them go for anywhere between $250 to $400. But for that investment, the Water Authority will give you $50 off your next bill if you show us you purchased one of these controllers, and we'll show you how to get that $50 rebate in a little bit. So not only do we give you $50 kind of off the bat to offset that investment, but you're also going to see money savings with water savings over the years. It'll eventually pay for itself when you install one of these smart controllers, just in how much water you're going to save. So the average user versus the water waster. Our average customer uses just under 130,000 gallons every year. We had one user on the East End who used 22 million gallons, I believe in 2018. That was primarily lawn irrigation and a geothermal heating and cooling system in the home that was consuming a lot of water. It was what we call an open loop geothermal system. Just as a comparison, so this one user used 22 million gallons. Southampton Hospital, which isn't far away, used 14.5 million gallons. So they used significantly more water than a hospital on one East End estate. That's what we're trying to get away from here. We know we've got much more manageable properties in Port Jeff area, but the principle remains the same for everybody. So some water conservation tips. Like I said, the biggest tip, make sure you're installing that rain sensor for your sprinkler. Make sure you're using an irrigation controller that can connect to Wi-Fi, and water less often. We recommend, even in the summer, every other day watering, if not every third day. Most people we find water their lawns every day, and it's really not necessary for our climate on Long Island to water every day. Even in a very hot stretch of July, say for example, if you notice the grass will get a little brown, if you water every other day, that grass will pop right back up. It's not gone forever, we promise. So we encourage people to water less than every day. And then just looking for the EPA WaterSense label when you're in stores. Sink fittings, things of that nature. We're always going to have that EPA WaterSense label that use a little less water. Shorten your showers, anywhere around 5, 6, 7 minutes is really ideal. And then detecting and fixing leaks around the home can actually save a ton of water, and that includes indoor leaks and outdoor leaks, because even a dripping faucet adds up over time. So just some other tips for you. A no-brainer here: shut the tap off when you're brushing your teeth, and only using full loads when you're using your dishwasher or your washing machine. Keeping plants moist with mulch instead of overwatering, and using a hose, not using a hose if a broom or another tool will work to clean something. And this one surprises people. Go into the car wash. Car washes tend to recycle water, whereas washing your car in the driveway is actually a more consumptive use of water. So we talked about that $50 rebate program earlier. That's what we call one of our WaterWise programs. We offer account credits for $50 at scwa.com/waterwise. So at the end of this presentation, I'm going to go to scwa.com and I'm going to show you how you can actually fill out our quick online form and send us your receipt for your smart irrigation controller or rain sensor, and we'll go ahead and give you that $50 off your bill. More than 11,000 Water Authority customers, 1,100 Water Authority customers have already taken advantage of this. The other WaterWise program we offer is called the WaterWise Checkup. It's a free service. We send one of our water experts to the home for a one-on-one consultation, and we kind of talk to you about your water use, where you think you're using the most water. We kind of estimate at each point what amount of water you're using, and we come up with a personalized plan for you to help cut back. This program was temporarily suspended, of course, due to COVID-19, but we're just getting back into the swing of it as people get vaccinated and going back into homes. And if you have any questions about any of these programs, here's a phone number, or you can email waterwisecheckup@scwa.com. And of course, we're always answering our DMs on Facebook and Twitter as well. So lots of ways to reach us if you're interested in this program. So one of the last things I want to talk to you about tonight is what we call Our Water, Our Lives. So Rich mentioned an organization earlier called LICAP, the Long Island Commission for Aquifer Protection. Well, LICAP is a bi-county commission, and one of its missions is to make sure we're conserving water wherever we can. So they launched the Our Water, Our Lives campaign, and you can go to ourwaterourlives.com, which has some really great water saving tips, and you could take the pledge to save water. Over 3,000 Long Islanders have taken the pledge to do what they can so far, and as you can see, Our Water, Our Lives involves every form of local government. You've got the county executive right here, the deputy Nassau County executive, the Irrigation Association of New York, and of course, our environmental organizations are involved as well. And with that, I'm going to open it up to questions. If you do have a question, you can either type it in to the Q&A section of the Zoom call and we'll answer you, or you can go ahead and use the raise hand feature and I'll give you permission to ask your question. Seeing two so far in the Q&A, I'm going to address the easier one first, and then we're going to move on to 1,4-dioxane. Kendra wants to know, how much lead piping do we have in Suffolk County, and is this a concern? I can let Paul elaborate on this, but is it fair to say, Paul, that we do not have any lead water main within Suffolk County?
Yeah, not that I'm aware of. We don't have any, there's no lead water mains and no lead service lines.
Yep. So all of our infrastructure is kind of post World War II era, as the population boom took place here on Long Island. So we don't have any lead piping. We could never have like a Flint, Michigan scenario or anything like that, which is great. Seeing some more questions coming in. Great. Yeah, Gail wants to know if we could address 1,4-dioxane in the water supply. I'm going to pull up a slide that actually deals with 1,4-dioxane. But in the meantime, Val, do you want to answer Gail's question in regards to the Port Jeff area?
Sorry, yeah, in the area, we have nothing over the MCL of 1 part per billion for 1,4-dioxane. A lot of our wells are blended to stay below that to prevent that, and we also use AOP, advanced oxidation process. We are trialing that for New York State approval to add those on to any wells that are of concern at this time.
So we hope that answers your question. The important thing to know when we talk about 1,4-dioxane is these are compounds that are now being regulated by the state of New York because they represent what regulators consider a lifetime exposure health risk. So when we talk about chemicals like that, we're not talking about bacteria that can get someone very sick very quickly. We're talking about installing treatment systems on our end in order to prevent any public health crisis from ever taking place. So you don't have to worry about, drinking the water from your tap with regard to 1,4-dioxane, just so everyone's clear about that. All right. So Dom wants to know, what is the water tower near Mather Hospital used for? What is the purpose of that? Paul, can you take this one?
Yeah, that Beltair Road, we call that Beltair Road standpipe. That's associated with Beltair Road Pump Station, and the water. I don't know if you saw the colors on the slide that I had before, but our water system's kind of broken up into smaller systems that we operate, usually because of elevation. And every water system usually has several elevated storage tanks associated with it. Beltair is one of them, and like I said, Beltair is there to supply water when we need it. When we have all our wells on, we need more water. The water comes out of the tank. It also is a source for some booster pumps that we use to boost water up into Beltair, and it's there, like I said, to cushion, kind of gives a cushion to the system. It's like a big balancing, think of it as a big spring on the system that dampens out pressure fluctuations.
All right, great. So William is curious, how much does it cost to ask whoever to install the device? So assuming that's with regard to smart controllers, so they pretty easy to install on your own. If you like someone to come and install it, I know landscaping companies, irrigation companies will install these. They'll replace your current controller. I'm not sure what they would charge. I mean, it depends on the irrigation company. But as far as I understand it, they're actually pretty easy to install on your own, if you want. Jill wants to know, what are you doing about the 25 times PFAS in our water, also the 18 times nitrates? Val, I'll let you take this one.
Yeah, I can take that. PFAS is readily removed by GAC filtration, which is granular activated carbon. That's like putting on a giant Brita filter onto our treatment system. So that is removed, and we also blend to keep it low as well. If that is well below in your area, the MCL as well. As for nitrates, we blend our wells. We blend our wells for any elevated nitrates to keep everything below the 10. Yeah.
So I think Rich actually mentioned this earlier, but it's an important distinction when we talk about raw water versus treated water. So when you see, oh no, there's 25 times the accepted level of something, like PFOS in the water, what you're looking at is raw water data. That's not the water that's actually being served to customers' homes. Like Val said, we have that granularly activated carbon treatment systems on wells that test, positive for elevated levels of PFOS. So it's not something, and we blend wells as well, like Val said. So it's not actually coming into your home. And the same with nitrates. Let's see. I have two concerns about my water quality. Can you please enlighten me about how rust gets in my water? And why does the water sometimes smell strongly of bleach? Nadine, I can tell you that we've gotten these two specific questions at every WaterTalk program we've ever done. So we'd be happy to answer that for you. I don't know if you want to take this one, Paul, the rust and then I guess the bleach.
Yeah, well, the rust, it can come from a couple of sources. Some of the wells have, low levels of iron, and there's also a compound called manganese, which is very similar to iron. Where we have high levels of it, we actually treat it to remove it. Where we have low levels of it, we treat a compound called phosphate that kind of sequesters it and keeps it from getting oxidized and turned into rust. But invariably, it does settle out and build up sometimes in as sediment in the water mains, particularly during the winter when you have quiet periods of water usage, and then like particularly this time of year when people start to use water again, that sediment can get stirred up and you can get rusty water. The other way, it also from the older cast iron mains that some of them are unlined. And because of that, some of the water, passing through those pipes can get rusty. We try to mitigate that by flushing. We have blow-offs in any of our systems with dead ends. Sometimes, it's a function of stagnant water, but we do have blow-offs that we do routinely use on dead end mains to flush them out. And then we have a maintenance flushing program. We try to hit every part of our system. We have a huge system. Every 3 years, but in areas where we have more frequent complaints and more frequent issues, we hit them more frequently. And I don't know if Rich, you have anything to add about that, about what customer service does.
Yeah, typically we'll respond to any water complaints. Anytime there's a disturbance in the system, like fire flow, if there's a fire in the area, street sweepers, or this time of year also tree spray is quite common. That too can cause a disturbance in the system, which can cause discoloration in your water.
Is there anything people can do when they do experience rust on the water? Is it just a matter of, hey, maybe leaving the sink on for a few minutes and letting that kind of dissipate out?
Yes, we do typically try to advise the customer to let it settle. And if it settles out and it goes away on its own, it's okay. And if it doesn't, please call us back. We do send a customer service technician out to the site that will open up hydrants or blow-offs and we'll flush. Because
sometimes it was done, some event caused things just to get stirred up, and it just needs time for that to settle back down and cycle through. But it is just kind of a thing that we as water suppliers, do have to live with, and we try to mitigate it as best we can. The chlorine, we is there to protect against the growth of things that get out into the distribution system. Maybe, in other words, the water we pump out of the ground, the wells are largely bacteria free. The chlorine is added and was required by the state health department we inject when the wells run, and we have to maintain what we call a residual, just like you would have in a pool. We maintain a chlorine residual in our distribution system to protect against anything that might grow or get into the system. The chlorine's there and available to kill it.
All right, great. Thank you. So Cynthia is curious, where does one purchase a smart irrigation timer and have it installed? I can tell you as the person who processes most of our credit applications, the most common place people buy these tends to be Amazon, which I guess is the most common place to buy anything nowadays, right? But you can also find them at any hardware store. Home Depot has them, Lowe's, etc. And then again, to have it installed, you can install them yourself or your irrigation company. I'm sure we'll be happy to install it for you. Christine wants to know, is there any effort to educate folks than having a lawn isn't essential to a good life. That is something that I would love to put on a bullet in my water conservation slide. The lawn isn't everything. I know Long Island lawn culture is a real thing. We tend not to be anti-lawn as much as pro water conservation. But it's an interesting thought. Yeah, it is possible to live without one. Sure, it'll really bring your water bill down too. Is this call going to be recorded and listen to it later? Yes. So that's an excellent point. I have been recording the Zoom call, and so the recording of this meeting, our presentation, and all the questions this will be posted to scwa.com tomorrow, as well as the Water Authority's YouTube channel, if that's easier for you. Just search Suffolk County Water Authority on YouTube and you'll find our channel. Do I need an additional water filter for drinking water? The short answer to this question is no, you do not. We don't recommend that people filter their water. It's a matter of personal taste. So for example, a lot of people like to use a Brita pitcher, or you've got, the carbon filter that's in your refrigerator with that dispenser. There's nothing wrong with using a carbon filter in your home on your water. You may notice that your water even tastes better when it does come out of that fridge filter or that Brita. But just keep in mind that when we do use filters, to make sure we're replacing them regularly at the manufacturer's direction, because we put 1 part per million of chlorine in the water to make sure there's no bacterial growth, to ensure disinfection. And so when you're using that filter, you're actually taking out that chlorine, which might make your water taste better. But when you take out the chlorine and you don't change out the filter gets saturated, you could actually be inviting bacteria into the water that we've already removed. So short answer is no, you don't need an additional filter for your drinking water. How does spraying for ticks affect our water system? Val, do you know anything about like tick spray with regard to, like, I guess that'd be an organic contaminant in theory?
I can't give a definite answer, but what I do know is we did test in our last unregulated monitoring rule, we did some emerging contaminant testing for the EPA. And one of the contaminants was permethrin, which I believe is used for spraying yards often. And one thing that I learned about it is that it does photodegrade. But at this time, I'm not sure of what's in the water for the tick spraying. But I could always get back to you and do some more research on that.
So the next question is, what's the latest on the Pine Barrens Clean Water Act? And I wish that I knew the answer to that. The communications director for the Pine Barrens Commission sits on the other side of this wall from my office. He is not here because it is 6:49 p.m. I wish I could knock on the wall and ask him. But that is something, if you send me an email, it's just seth.wallach@scwa.com. I'd be happy to get you an answer on that. And that goes for any questions that we need more information on or can't answer tonight. Always just send us an email and we'll get back to you. All right. Am I wasting my money using a Brita filter at home? Yes and no. We answered that question, I think, already. Question for Val. Would it help to install reverse osmosis in our homes for additional safety? A little bit different question than the Brita.
Yeah, it's a little different question. I'm going to say no, just because the treatment that we put the water through is superior. We're already providing you with clean drinking water. So it's going through the GAC, we have iron filtration on many of our wells, and we're going to be installing the AOP. And the RO is nothing like the advanced oxidation system to remove the 1,4-dioxane. And a lot of times, like Seth said, the RO systems, they're removing the chlorine from your water. And that's essentially your own little distribution system in your home now doesn't have that disinfectant.
Great, thanks. Are any water mains in Port Jefferson Village unlined? Paul, do you want to take this one?
I would think yes. There's probably a likelihood that they are, especially because given some of the age of it. I mean, the ones down in the village, they're like 1900s vintage. So yes, it definitely could be a possibility.
Right.
But in general, the water quality coming out of the wells, just the native quality, the natural, the pH and the mineral content of North Shore wells is superior than on the South Shore. So that's another good thing about living on the North Shore.
Absolutely.
I'm a North Shore person.
Yeah, I live in East Setauket myself, so I understand. Is there a schedule for when hydrants are flushed? The answer is there absolutely is, and it is available at scwa.com. I'll share my screen in a minute once we're done with questions. I'll show you how to find our flushing schedule. When will SCWA provide public water to our home on Youngs Road in Orient? We've got somebody from Orient on the call. I do not think that they got the email about this meeting, but that's quite all right. Not sure. I know Orient is probably often a new community for us in terms of like installing water main, Paul. Is that fair?
Well, yeah, so I mean, we did have a proposed project to install water main out to Orient quite a few years back during the Obama administration. We did get a grant, but there was a lot of community opposition. So at the time they chose not to go forward with the project, but you know, it is something I think in the future, you know, we would like to do. It is a goal for us to extend water out there. I know the health department, you know, is an advocate of it, but we don't have any immediate plan to do so. You know, if some funding would be made available, then it could be a possibility in the future.
All right, Dom wants to know if the Lawrence Aviation site affects the quality of Port Jeff's water. An interesting one.
I'm not sure about that. I don't have enough information. I don't know the details of you know the plume around Lawrence Aviation. I would say, knowing what I know about where our well fields are located relative to that, it probably not, because we're probably up gradient or well to the west or east of the Lawrence Aviation site, and the primary groundwater motion is towards the north. So.
Yeah.
And not just to add to that, although I'm not exactly sure either, I'm going to say, Dom, you're probably referring to PFAS here, and PFAS, like I said a little bit earlier, is removed by GAC that we have in our wells, and we blend our wells. So with regard to how that is affecting your water quality, perhaps it's affecting the raw water, but once it goes through our treatment process and now you are drinking it, the treated water, it is safe to drink.
I mean, generally speaking, the water quality in the greater Port Jefferson area tends to be pretty good. We're pretty lucky in that respect. All right, so I see two hands up. I'm going to call on Tracy first. So Tracy, if you unmute, you should be allowed to speak.
Yeah, thank you. So I had two questions. The first was, how is the water actually treated? Is it treated with chlorine or chloramine?
Chlorine. We don't do any. There's no chloramination on Long Island, and that's related to the native water quality. The compounds. We don't have the kind of compounds we would need to have in order to have to disinfect with chloramines. So it's just chlorine.
Okay, thank you. And then the second question was, how do you address microplastics in the drinking water? Because that can come from either, you know, plastic bottles or also too from laundry, you know, because the clothes today, they're, you know, made of synthetic fibers, so that can also get into the water.
So
go ahead, Paul.
Well, I was just going to say that, you know, I know that microplastics is a you know, an upcoming, you know, it's an issue now, right? And probably the, you know, the water industry is maybe a little bit behind that, but all of our water coming from wells, it's filtered down through the you know, sandy aquifer, and it would probably not be an issue for groundwater wells, as far as I'm aware.
Thank you.
And a lot of the microplastics, you might also know them as phthalates. We test for them in our organic department, and there's no detections in the water.
Thank you very much.
All right, so I see that George also has his hand raised. You should be able to unmute yourself now, George.
Are you open for a question?
Absolutely. That's what we're here for.
Good. And my name is George Noren. I'm a resident of Stony Brook. I've lived there for over 50 years. And I'm spending a bit of my time in Florida, where a problem has been reported that a compound of sulfur in the fertilizing has come down and has released mercury. Mercury is mostly inert. However, it does this compound supposedly reactivates the mercury in the water. Can you just quickly tell me, do we have a mercury problem or do we not? I'll unmute.
We do not have a mercury problem in the water, and definitely not in your area.
We do not.
No.
Okay, because there's a big concern here about fertilizing too close to the water, too close to the drainage systems, and people are kind of following that process. You know, the runoff of the fertilizer has to be considered. If you live near a lake or a pond or something, you can't fertilize within 15 or 20 feet of it. So.
I'm sure someone else can probably take over for me here if I say something wrong, but our water is not coming from any reservoirs or lakes or anything. Our water is coming from the aquifer. So that's a big difference.
Thank you. No, I understand that it's a completely different geography, if you will, and situation, but part of Long Island is agricultural, and I'm sure that does affect the aquifer. So.
And mercury is something that would come up at the lab if something were to test positive for some level of mercury. That's something that the laboratory would be able to detect.
Okay, I'm happy. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for coming. Thanks for joining us. I don't see any more hands raised. There's a couple questions in the chat, and I think one in the Q&A. Mark is new to the area, and he wants to know how important it is to have a whole house filtration system. Is it necessary, nice to have, or unnecessary altogether? I would go with unnecessary altogether, but if anyone else wants to elaborate, feel free.
Yes, I had said before that our water goes through a series of treatments. So we have GAC, we blend. Soon we will have an advanced oxidation process on our wells, iron removal. So that is all, your water is all being treated already and cleaned up before it gets to your tap.
And then just one more question, which aquifer are we currently using? Paul or Rich, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe all of the wells in this area would be Magothy wells.
There might still be some glacials.
Okay.
Yep, because I think the glacial aquifer is thicker up here, right? So there might be some glacial wells, but it's a mix of both probably.
Gotcha.
The majority of what we get of our wells comes out of the Magothy, but we still have a fair amount of glacial.
Okay. All right, so seeing no more questions, I'll stick around for a minute in case anything pops up. But otherwise, just thank you so much, everybody, for coming and attending the WaterTalk program. If you have any questions, if you log off the call, you think of something, oh, I should have asked that, just shoot me an email, seth.wallach@scwa.com, and we'll be happy to get back to you. Have a great night, everyone.